Welcome to First Sleep Aid, calm stories to help you unwind, learn, and fall asleep. From true crime to curious facts and thoughtful ideas, always softly spoken. Subscribe now and take a deep breath. You're in good hands.
Welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're going to explore something pretty significant in social psychology. It's called the bystander effect.
Right. It's this idea that, well, you're actually less likely to help someone out if there are other people around during, say, an emergency.
Yeah, it really shows how much, the presence of others affects what we do or don't do in public when maybe someone needs help.
And our starting point for this discussion, it really has to be the case of Kitty Genovese. This happened back on March 13th, 1964, in Queens, New York. She was 28, attacked near her home.
That story. The initial reports were quite shocking, weren't they? They claimed something like 38 witnesses saw or heard things but didn't step in.
Exactly. Now, it's important to say later on, investigations showed it was perhaps more complicated than that initial story.
Right, the details got fuzzier, the number questioned, but the impact of that story, regardless of the exact facts, was huge. It really pushed psychologists to ask, why don't people always help?
Precisely. So, in this deep dive, that's our goal. We want to try and understand this pattern, this inaction. We'll look at the key research it sparked, the psychology behind it, and maybe touch on how that original narrative itself has been looked at again.
Okay, so let's get into the research itself. The foundational work, that really came from two social psychologists, didn't it? John Darley and Bibb Latané, around 1968.
Yes, their work was pivotal. They designed experiments specifically to figure out why having other people around might stop someone from helping.
And how did they test that? I remember something about intercoms.
That's right. They had participants sitting in separate rooms, supposedly discussing personal problems over an intercom. But part of the setup was a recording, an actor pretending to have a seizure.
Oh, great. And the crucial part was how many people the real participant thought were listening in.
Exactly. That was the key variable. Some participants were led to believe they were the only other person listening to this person in distress.
And others thought there was a group.
Right. Some thought there were, say, 4 other listeners also on the line.
And the results were pretty stark, as I recall.
Very much so. When the participant believed they were the only one hearing the emergency, over 80% went to get help.
Over 80%. Okay.
But when they thought there were 4 other people listening, that number dropped a lot, down to about 31%.
Wow, that's a massive difference. And this led them to coin a specific term, didn't it?
Yes, a really important concept, diffusion of responsibility.
Diffusion of responsibility. Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure, it's the feeling that, well, when you're in a group, the personal obligation to act gets spread out. It's diluted among everyone present.
So each individual feels less personally responsible.
Precisely. It's like you think, oh, someone else will probably call for help, or someone else must have already done something.
The responsibility isn't solely on your shoulders anymore.
Exactly. And this feeling, this diffusion, it tends to be stronger under certain conditions.
Like what?
Well, ambiguity is a big one. If it's not crystal clear that it is an emergency, people hesitate, they look around.
They look to others for cues.
Right. And also the sheer size of the group matters. The bigger the group generally, the more the responsibility feels diffused.
Makes sense. More people, less individual pressure.
And another factor is whether people know each other. If it's a group of strangers, that sense of shared responsibility can be even weaker.
Okay, so it's not necessarily that people are callous or don't care when they're in a group.
That's a really crucial point to emphasize. The bystander effect isn't fundamentally about a lack of empathy.
It's more of a cognitive shift, a change in how you see your role in that moment.
Yes, exactly. It's about how you perceive your own accountability within that specific group context. The impulse to help might still be there, deep down, but the perceived need for you specifically to act is lessened.
Okay, so diffusion of responsibility is one major piece. What other psychological factors are at play here contributing to this inaction?
Another really interesting one is called pluralistic ignorance.
Pluralistic ignorance. Okay, what's that?
It's this tendency, especially when things are uncertain, to look at how everyone else is reacting to figure out how you should react.
Right, checking the social temperature.
Exactly. But here's the paradox. If everyone is doing that, looking around, seeing nobody else panicking or acting concerned, then everyone might privately think, huh, maybe it's not serious after all.
Even if, individually, they're actually worried or unsure.
Precisely. Everyone assumes that if nobody else looks concerned, there must be no reason for concern. So collectively, inaction becomes the norm, reinforcing the idea that nothing's wrong.
It's like a feedback loop of inaction, based on misreading everyone else's calmness.
You got it. It's a kind of shared misunderstanding of the situation. And this ties directly into social influence, how the group shapes our individual response.
The sheer presence of others creates uncertainty.
It can, yeah. It can make you second guess your own judgment. Am I overreacting? Do they know something I don't? This can lead to freezing, not from apathy, but from confusion about the right way to behave.
Waiting for someone else to signal the correct response.
In a way, yes. And then there's the element of a personal risk assessment.
Meaning, thinking about the consequences of intervening.
Right. People often make these rapid, maybe even subconscious calculations. Will I look foolish if I jump in and it's nothing? Could I get hurt if I intervene? Am I qualified to help?
And being in a group might amplify those worries, because you feel like you're being watched.
Absolutely. There's a potential for public judgment, for embarrassment if you misread the situation or make things worse. That fear of looking incompetent or overzealous can be a powerful inhibitor.
So, faced with ambiguity and the inaction of others, plus the fear of misstepping, non-intervention becomes the easier path.
It often becomes the default path, yes.
Okay, let's circle back to the Kitty Genovese case for a moment. You mentioned earlier that the initial story was perhaps not the full picture. How has our understanding of that specific night changed?
Well, over time, for further digging into the events, revealed a more nuanced picture. It turns out some neighbors did try to call the police.
Oh, really?
Yes. And there's evidence that at least one person did go out to try and help Mrs. Genovese, though tragically it was very late in the attack.
So the narrative of 38 people saw everything and did absolutely nothing wasn't quite accurate.
It seems likely that number and the implication of total inaction was an oversimplification, possibly amplified by the media looking for a stark, compelling angle.
Right. But the core point remains. The incident, as it was understood then, was incredibly important.
Absolutely crucial. It acted as the catalyst for all this incredibly valuable research by Darley and Latane and others. It helped uncover these really fundamental cognitive patterns.
And it's important to frame this research correctly, isn't it? It's not about saying people are inherently bad or uncaring.
Not at all. It's about understanding the psychological mechanisms, the situational factors that influence behavior in groups. It's insight, not blame.
And these factors aren't universal, are they? Culture must play a role, too.
Definitely. The bystander effect isn't identical everywhere. Cultural norms matter. You might expect, for instance, in more collectivist societies or really close-knit communities, that people might feel a stronger obligation to intervene.
A stronger sense of shared responsibility built into the culture itself.
Potentially, yes. And specific situations can also cut through the effect.
Like what? What makes people more likely to act, even in a group?
Well, if the situation is completely unambiguous, like there's absolutely no question someone is in danger, people are more likely to help.
Clarity removes the doubt.
Right. Or if there's an authority figure present who takes charge and tells people what to do.
Like a police officer or a lifeguard.
Exactly. Or even just a direct personal appeal. If the person in distress looks right at you and asks for help, that singles you out and breaks the diffusion.
Makes it personal, removes the anonymity of the crowd.
Yes, it counteracts that feeling that someone else will handle it.
Now, what about the opposite? What happens when someone does break the pattern and steps in?
That's also very powerful. Research shows that if just one person takes decisive action,
It can break the spell, so to speak.
it really can. That single act provides what's called social proof.
No.
It signals to everyone else, okay, this is serious, and this is how we should respond.
It gives others permission almost to follow suit.
Exactly. It can turn that collective inaction into collective action. One person can genuinely shift the dynamic of the entire group.
And this understanding that intervention can be encouraged has led to practical things, like training programs.
Yes, absolutely. Bystander intervention training is now used in lots of places, schools, workplaces, even the military.
What do those programs typically teach?
They focus on a few key things. First, recognizing ambiguous situations, learning the subtle signs that intervention might be needed.
So sharpening awareness.
Right. Then really emphasizing taking personal responsibility, consciously deciding you will do something.
Counteracting that diffusion we talked about.
Exactly. And they also teach different ways to intervene safely. It doesn't always mean direct confrontation.
What are some indirect methods?
Things like calling emergency services, creating a distraction to de-escalate a situation, checking in with the person being targeted, or even just documenting what's happening. Offering support afterwards is also key.
So it's about having a toolkit of options.
Precisely. And these educational efforts, awareness campaigns, role-playing, they do seem to help increase the chances people will step up.
That's good to know. It means we're not just stuck with this phenomenon. We can learn to counteract it.
We can. And, it's also important to realize the bystander effect isn't just about these big, dramatic emergencies we've mostly discussed.
You mean it shows up in smaller ways too?
Oh, definitely. It can operate in much more subtle, everyday situations.
Like what? Can you give some examples?
Sure. Think about maybe seeing someone being subjected to online harassment and just scrolling past, or being in a work meeting and seeing someone talked over or dismissed, but staying silent.
Or just walking by someone on the street who looks obviously distressed or lost and assuming someone else will stop.
Exactly. Those are all moments where similar dynamics, diffusion of responsibility, maybe a bit of pluralistic ignorance can be at play.
So these are quieter opportunities for intervention.
Yes. And in these everyday moments, overcoming the effect often starts with simple awareness. Just noticing that impulse inside yourself to wait, to see what others do.
And consciously questioning it.
Right. Asking yourself, okay, why am I hesitating? Is help actually needed here? It's about interrupting that automatic deference to the group.
And the intervention itself doesn't have to be massive in those cases.
Not at all. Sometimes it's just asking, are you okay? Or offering simple directions, or speaking up briefly in a meeting. Small acts can still make a difference. It's often more about awareness than needing to be some kind of hero.
So wrapping things up then, this deep dive really highlights how powerfully our social context shapes our feeling of responsibility.
It really does. The presence of others, which we usually find comforting, can paradoxically lead us to be less helpful when help is most needed.
But again, understanding this isn't about judging human nature as flawed.
No, not at all. It's more like an invitation, maybe. An invitation to be a bit more present, a bit more responsive, maybe find a little more courage in those moments, big or small, where what we do or don't do really matters.
That's a thoughtful way to put it. So perhaps a final thought for everyone listening. Consider where the bystander effect might be subtly playing out in your own life. And think about the potential ripple effect, even of small actions, when you choose to step in. It might be more significant than you realize.